Whether you know Dave Bautista as the fearsome WWE superstar Batista or the resident metaphor misunderstander of the Marvel Cinematic Universe Drax the Destroyer, he's one of the world's leading providers of intimidating shirtless characters. Bautista has slowly raised his profile over the years. And while he's becoming a blockbuster juggernaut who could potentially give Dwayne The Rock Johnson a run for his money, the wrestler-turned-actor has also been able to deliver the goods in roles that require fewer spinebuster moves and more nuance. After all, Bautista's role as Drax makes it clear that the big man has a knack for comedic timing, and it's difficult to imagine any other WWE alum in his turn as Sapper Morton in Denis Villeneuve's Blade Runner 2049. Throughout the years, he has endured all sorts of debilitating difficulties. Here's a look at the tragic real-life story of Dave Bautista. Dave Bautista's rough childhood. There's no easy way to put this. Dave Bautista had a really difficult childhood, as detailed by the man himself in his book Batista Unleashed. He was born in 1969, and he says the Washington, D.C. area he grew up in was one of the nation's poorest throughout the 1960s, 1970s, and 1980s. As he was growing up, crack cocaine was about to make its entrance. Murders in the neighborhood were common, and according to him, life expectancy for children was worse than in many third-world countries. Bautista goes on to say that homelessness and corruption ran rampant, and even honest folks couldn't trust the police. If that sounds like the most dystopic imaginable place to grow up, Dave Bautista immediately raises the stakes by casually mentioning that 3 people died on his doorstep before he turned 9. In an interview with the Tampa Bay Times, he elaborates on one particular death, where his mother found a man dying of a gunshot wound outside their house. She called for help, but the officials took too long and the man didn't make it. Meanwhile, Bautista, his sister, and several other children were happily playing outside nearby. They were so accustomed to violent sights that they didn't even shed a tear. And after Bautista's mother saw this, the family promptly moved to San Francisco. Backstage trouble. While Dave Bautista was a huge WWE superstar, rumors claim he had his share of backstage trouble. In 2006, he even allegedly got into a real fight with fellow wrestler Booker T. WrestleView reports the fight took place when the men shot an ad for the upcoming SummerSlam event. And while it was initially thought to be a staged incident to drum up hype, reports soon emerged that it had been a legitimate physical fight. Locker room whispers indicated that bad blood had been brewing for quite some time because of Bautista's bad backstage attitude. The big man had allegedly started to make comments that he carried the company on his back, and that he was drawing in the most money, and his relatively quick rise to the top of the food chain and lack of humility had angered many of his colleagues. Said colleagues were also reported to be quite happy with the way Booker T stood up to Bautista, and other wrestlers were shown hugging and high-fiving Booker after the incident. WrestleView also reported that Bautista confirmed things had been escalating for a while between Booker T and himself, and the fight had been a long time coming. Gym addiction. If you've ever wondered what it takes to get a body like Dave Bautista's, the big man is happy to tell you, but you might not like the answer. In a 2019 interview with the Tampa Bay Times, Bautista says he spent his 20s in a state he calls reverse anorexia. Despite being a fresh father of 2 daughters, he had no real plans or ambitions. So he got stuck in a loop. He worked all night as a bouncer, then spent hours at the gym. And by the time he got home, he'd sleep all day and start the cycle anew. Despite weighing over 300 pounds and doing virtually nothing but working and lifting, he felt he was never big enough. Dave Bautista spent 10 years on this schedule, which didn't do any favors for his family's financial stability. As he was pushing 30, he realized he had wasted a decade of his life, and was in a situation where he had to borrow money just so he could afford to buy Christmas presents for his children. This bleak situation ultimately came with a silver lining, as the impoverished Bautista decided to try his hand at wrestling, despite being far older than most rookies. Steroid allegations. Dave Bautista's hulking physique seems a bit more age-appropriate and less veiny these days. But back in his WWE heyday, he used to be so ripped that it seemed almost impossible. According to Forbes, there have been allegations that this is because Bautista was aided by every dishonest athlete's best friend, steroids. In 2007, the aftermath of the Chris Benoit murder-suicide case led the WWE to take a long, hard look at the company's wellness policy, and an ESPN report eventually linked Bautista and a number of other wrestlers to a large doping ring. Bautista strongly denied the allegations and insisted that he was both tested regularly and operating in full compliance with the WWE wellness program. While Dave Bautista ultimately avoided suspension, the cloud of steroid suspicion has hovered over his head ever since. Wrestling Inc. and Bleacher Report have both reported on industry whispers about his past steroid use, and it has been pointed out that some of his injuries seem oddly consistent with the ones steroid users commonly suffer. Tumultuous relationship with the WWE. Dave Bautista made his name as a WWE powerhouse, but his relationship with the company has been stormy. According to Sportskeeda, Bautista has quit the company twice in 2010 and 2014. His first departure was reportedly because of a lack of movie opportunities. As Bautista discovered, the WWE wouldn't offer him roles in the company's movies despite his in-ring star status. He asked if he could go outside the WWE and audition for other films, but was allegedly told, "You're our property. Get dressed for the house show and get to work." Bautista handed in his notice and left the company a year later as a borderline pariah. On his last night, few people bothered to thank him or say goodbye. He made a comeback in 2013, but creative differences soon drove him out again. He reportedly wanted a slow build-up as a heel, but the WWE decided to strongly push him as a babyface, and the fans didn't really love it. According to Bautista, it didn't help that when he pitched a cross-promotion with a little movie he was doing called Guardians of the Galaxy, WWE big shots Triple H and Stephanie McMahon basically laughed in his face. Troublemaker youth. It's not exactly news that troubled youths tend to gang up and dabble in crime, and young Dave Bautista was no exception. On the podcast Anna Faris is Unqualified, Bautista says his childhood gang of thugs used to specialize on petty theft. They'd go down to the houses of kids they knew and steal small stuff like clothes and knickknacks they couldn't afford. Dave Bautista has since called his youthful thieving ways petty, ridiculous, and kid stuff, but puberty turned him into a completely different beast. According to the Tampa Bay Times, Bautista grew large and intimidating during his later teenage years and ended up taking on a protector role in his group. He eventually ended up with a body that implied violence, which made a career as a nightclub bouncer a pretty logical choice. Unfortunately, Bautista turned out to be a bouncer of the splatter variety, and he roughed up unwanted clientele so much that he was once even charged with assault. Difficulties with dyslexia. A large, muscular man with a wrestling background can often carry the stigma of people assuming he's a big, stupid lug, and Dave Bautista faces an extra hurdle in his race to conquer that sort of snap judgment. He's dyslexic. In an interview on Chris Jericho's Talk as Jericho podcast, Bautista says his dyslexia has made things like table reads for Avengers Infinity War and other films pretty difficult for him. Still, the wrestler has kept a sense of humor about his condition, and has been known to reply to badly spelled Twitter insults with friendly advice about how to deal with dyslexia. As it happens, Dave Bautista isn't the only guardian of the galaxy who deals with dyslexia. According to the New York Times, his castmate Zoe Saldana is also dyslexic, and Dyslexic Advantage has praised both stars for publicly speaking out about their struggles with the condition.